Hello and welcome to this Crypto Professor update video on Yearn Finance. Yearn Finance has moved quite significantly since the last video I posted, around about the $11,500 region it was back on the original video. We've since declined fairly substantially down to around about 7,500 on the 5th of November. And then over the last 2 days, we have climbed significantly all the way up to around about $18,000. I'm just going to go into a little bit of analysis about that movement. This, I believe, is a short squeeze. So there were quite a lot of people, quite a lot of traders who were shorting the price from this region or even this region down to as low as 7,500. Around about 7,500, a lot of people started being interested in buying Yearn Finance again. We'll now see quite a consolidation period of profit taking. You'll notice that has already happened. The price right now is around about the $14,000 region. Interestingly, I was looking at several reports saying that $14,000 was likely to be the area where the price squeeze coalesced. So that's a quite interesting point of resistance. You'll notice that on the 50-day EMA on a day chart, we actually smashed right into that. So far, we haven't got a 200-day because Yearn Finance hasn't been in existence for 200 days yet. But if we narrow down our focus, we can actually see on the 4-hour chart, we've actually hit this 200 4-hour period resistance level and are now bouncing back down again. So this is the 50, this is the 200. The 200 currently comes in at about 14.5 and the 50 around about 11,138. So it remains to see what will happen. We've obviously breached this level. We'll now probably oscillate between these two prices. If we breach lower than 11,138 or about 11,150, we will then continue a descent. But let's go back to the day chart. There are two possible scenarios here. One is based on something called Elliott wave analysis, which if you're familiar with, will demonstrate 5 waves. This period before, I'm not really going to pay too much attention to, but I am going to plot this as if it were wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and if we do see a breakdown of the price here, we may see a wave 5. Now, a potential price target for wave 5 is going to be quite dramatic considering everything else that's going on. It's going to be going down to around about 4,400 or so. I don't think we'll get the 0.618, which is $500. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think we'll get somewhere, if we're lucky, down to around about 4,400 for Yearn Finance. And that's if there's incredibly bearish news about Yearn's interest rates or the Yearn development behind the scenes, basically. I actually think the more likely scenario than this, I'm going to ignore the Elliott wave pattern for now, temporarily, whilst I focus on a shorter term time frame. If we look at the 4-hour or even the 1-hour, we can see there's a lot of oscillation around this region, which means that $18,000 is the resistance point for now. So if you are interested in a very quick, short-term, high-risk trade, there is a short here for Yearn Finance. I personally won't be taking it because I'm actually looking for long exposure to this asset rather than short-term short exposure. But the trade I would recommend right now to anyone who's looking to trade immediately would be a short. For long entries, I'm now looking for either a retrace completely back down to this 7,500 level, in which case we'll break down to the aforementioned $4,500 region. That'll be quite a scary decline indeed. Alternatively, we'll have a standard sell-off from this price action here, where the price will then reform a more bullish candle. So if we align our Fib retracement tool up, we can actually see the price we're now looking at is just underneath 10,000 US dollars, around about 9.8. I wouldn't set your limits and entries any lower than 9.7. I would dollar cost average into this movement. So if you're looking to buy a whole Yearn or a whole Yearn Finance token, I would place half at around about the $11,000 region and maybe half at about the 9,800 region. Alternatively, if your ultimate trade size is 2, you can do even better, because then you can just place another one around about the $5,000 level if we do see this complete to the downside in a 5-wave pattern, as I have alluded to on the longer term chart. Personally, I think that the long term technical analysis is the weaker of these two. I personally think we will see a correction back down to around about $10,000, and then it'll start moving up in its own wave 3 pattern on a shorter time frame. Perhaps we'll actually get a broader wave 4, maybe up to $25,000 or so, looking at the longer term charts. So if we just examine this, the next area of significant resistance is around about 24,000, 25,000. You can see this liquidity zone here. Between about 22 and 25,000. So if we breach this 18, that's our next port of call. Personally, I don't really see it happening at the moment. I think that this is going to be a corrective sell-off. We'll get people here who are banking either short-term gains or are deciding to exit out of Yearn for the long term at a price which is not as bad as down here, but admittedly is still quite bad if you were bought long around this region. Okay. Let's look a little bit at the RSIs, because the RSIs can give us a little bit more information on what the time frame element is. Okay, so obviously all short-term time frames earlier over the last 2 days were very much overbought. We've now started to correct our pattern, and there's a lot of movement on the 4-hour chart to be had down to this region, so that actually encompasses the 200-day EMA, which would support dropping down further on this 4-hour chart than the $7,500 region. On the day chart, however, we've still got very much room to maneuver. If you notice, we're actually at almost the full all-time high on the RSI for Yearn Finance. So that's either going to be incredibly bullish if we do break higher, because then that'll be a new territory for Yearn Finance. We're around about the 50% mark at the moment. So in actual fact, given the RSI's movement, if it breaks out, that's an incredibly bullish signal. However, if we decide to show significant resistance here, which is what I'm thinking will happen, we will actually come back down, which is why on the short-term time frame, I am bearish on Yearn Finance, hence looking for a short entry if you are trading it immediately. I think we'll come back down potentially to retest underneath the oversold territory, back into oversold territory, to make sure that we can actually capitulate this full movement. As to the fundamental analysis, I'm not quite sure what caused these two big spikes today. I know that Bitcoin has obviously been making headlines, and that has caused a lot of trading activity in all altcoins. Yearn Finance obviously today, earlier, was actually more expensive once again than a whole Bitcoin. Now it's no longer the case. It's come down to around about 13,000 or so. We've also seen a sell-off for Bitcoin as well, as the US election has announced, obviously Joe Biden winning that presidential seat. So in terms of what I'm looking out for now, I'm looking out for a nice small capitulation back down to around about $10,000. I will then be watching the price very carefully at that $10,000 region. Personally, I am looking for it to capitulate there, and depending on the news, depending on the fundamental news, I will either be entering tentative longs, perhaps with a stop loss around about the $9,500 region, and preparing for entry if we do see $5,000 to $4,000 if that scenario plays out. And I must stress, I don't think it's going to play out. I still think we will see a capitulation down to around about $10,000 and a bounce from there. But in the interest of having all our options covered, I would like to say that I believe it's about a 20% chance of seeing Yearn at $4,000 and a 70 to 80% chance of having a bounce around 10,000, at least to some degree, and another profitable trade. After all, if you'd entered at 7,500, you could have made at least 100% of your profit on that nice big movement we had over the last 2 days. So that's an update of Yearn Finance. I will post another update after we have a little bit more of a sell-off, and looking for that long-term entry once again that I alluded to in the first conversation that I had about Yearn Finance, where I was looking for a movement potentially as high as the $60,000 to $70,000 range, which on the long-term charts is what we should be doing over the next 6 to 12 months. The Crypto Professor likes feedback. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it. If you'd like more of the same, please don't forget to subscribe. Or if you have questions, please post them in the comments and I'll endeavour to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.